Let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Yulia Zhernovaya. I'm the head of growth and at Giveffect and will be the moderator for today's session. We're so excited to welcome you here. Thank you for joining our session, One Team, One System, how high-performing nonprofits eliminate silos. I'm joined, of course, by our fantastic speakers, Melissa Jones and JoEllen Richardson from Habitat for Humanity of Kansas City. For those who might not be familiar with Giveffect, we are all-in-one nonprofit software platform that brings together all the tools organizations need to operate effectively, including donor management, volunteer management, CRM, email, grants, you name it. And our goal is simple, is to help nonprofits to run more smoothly, operate efficiently, achieve financial stability, and ultimately further their mission. Before we dive in, I just have a couple of housekeeping items. So, of course, we love the engagement and thank you everyone so far for engaging with us in the chat. Please feel free to continue that. Again, any feedback, anything that you find valuable throughout the session, please put it in the chat. My colleague Nicole is there. We'll be helping with moderating the chat throughout the session. And of course, our session is going to be around 15 minutes. So the first 40 minutes is going to be a discussion. And the last 10 minutes, we are going to have a live Q&A. So as we go through the session, if you have a question, please don't wait till the last minute. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to utilize that icon and leave your question, and we will get to it at the very end. So why are we gathering here today for this session? Most nonprofit leaders, experienced a version of this moment. Think about this picture this for a second. A fundraising campaign wraps up, donations are coming in, volunteers help to power the event, the finance is reconciling the numbers. But the team is looking at three different versions of what just happened. Everyone is working hard towards the mission, but they're not always seeing the same information or the full picture of what others' teams are doing. And as the organization grows, that kind of friction slows down decisions and create extra work. So as we all know, in the nonprofit space, there is no problem with collaboration. But a lot of teams are struggle with, because of the work, the data, the decision are spread across different systems and teams. That's why the alignment across team is such an important part of building future-ready nonprofit. And that's exactly what we're exploring here throughout the next summit. So again, today we're so excited to welcome Habitat for Humanity of Kansas City because they made this transition, and Melissa Jones and JoEllen Richardson help their teams move from working around each other to work with far greater visibility and collaboration. Today, they will share what that looked like inside their organization and what changed when their teams began to operate on one shared system. So before we jump in, Melissa, Joe, I would love, it would be great for everyone to get to know you a little bit more. So can you please introduce yourself, your role within the organization, and we'll get started there.
Thanks so much. We're so excited to be here today. I'm Melissa Jones, and I serve as the Vice President of Development here at Habitat for Humanity of Kansas City. I have been with the organization for 8 years and got to be the lead person and the point person on bringing Giveffect to our organization right at the beginning of the pandemic, which was actually perfect timing because a lot of things stopped and we could really focus on the integration and the migration over to Giveffect. Ever since we've moved, we haven't looked back. We've just continued to implement Giveffect on a bigger level. So excited to share a little bit about what that looks like here at our organization.
Thank you.
So my name is JoEllen Richardson, and I'm the VP of Finance, and I have been here almost 3 years. So, 2 years and 11 months. And so when I came in, just getting my bearing coming from more of a for-profit background, learning kind of just a little bit of everything, it was a great opportunity for us to try something new and to really focus on utilizing the tools within Giveffect and that sync, that utilization between that and QuickBooks. So it was a kind of a perfect storm in that I was new and was wanting a new approach, and it was something that the development team was out there, but just hadn't been explored.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much both for again being here and introducing yourself. I wanted to start off with asking you to take us back, right? And share a little bit how things were before you got aligned in one system. So can you walk us through a real example where fundraising, volunteers, and finance were all involved, but didn't have a full visibility into what everyone were doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give an example of we have a lot of corporate partners that give to us for corporate team build days. So say the company commits $5,000 sponsorship. That's supposed to include a volunteer day, lunch, shirts, signage on the construction site, the full experience. In real life, what it looked like sometimes is the sponsor would show up to the construction site and there wouldn't be a sign with their logo. Lunch might have been ordered, but it was too much or too less because we didn't know how many volunteers were coming. Staff was constantly saying, have they even paid? We don't know. Joe, have they paid? Have we got the check? And then even weeks later, finance is trying to reconcile revenue and we're like, where did that check go? And because they had sent their money through their foundation, it had a different name on it. And so it was connected to a completely different account. And so it wasn't because people weren't doing their jobs. We were all doing our jobs, but we were all operating on different versions of the truth, and we weren't looking at one platform.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like the processes were definitely much harder than they supposed to be, and a lot of friction happened between different teams. And I'm sure, Melissa, I think a lot of like we speak to his nonprofit every day, and a lot of organizations can relate to that. I'm curious, Joe, on your end, from the finance side, like where did finance team often feel the disconnect between teams? Is it reporting, unclear ownership, something else?
Yeah, I think that, I like to say we don't create the funds, we just account for them. And so when we're not on the front line of doing the fundraising, to Melissa's point, when a check comes in, I don't necessarily know exactly what it's for. So what we had was a lot of guessing, was what is happening, and being finance professionals and accountants, we have a general idea, right? I mean, sometimes someone puts in a memo what it's for or where it came from, but what was happening was there was just a lot of educated guessing, shall we say. And then on the back end, we're going to come back, at the end of the month when it's reconcile time, and we're going to, kind of hash that out with the development team and make sure that we're on the same page. Well, that creates a lot of extra work. I'm always a person that's like, let's get the data from the source. And so this has been great for us in that we eliminate the guesswork. And so for me, in finance, I don't ever want to guess. Guessing is not my favorite thing. I like things to be precise and to the penny. And so, I think that was kind of probably one of the biggest obstacles is just, kind of being on the back end and then the delay in confirming, and that you have the data correct.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing that. So again, I think it's very common, right? Just operating in silos, having different systems for different purposes and so on, in the space. So Melissa, maybe for you, do you remember what happened in the organization when you decided to change things up, to go from siloed to streamline? Like, I'm curious if it was just build up over time, or maybe there was like an event and they were like, okay, we're done with it. We're just gonna go ahead and change it.
That's a great question. I wish there was like some big blow up thing that happened, but honestly, it wasn't a big moment. It was just a pattern that we were like, we can't ignore this anymore. We kept running into the same situation over and over. Systems weren't talking to each other. We were spending so much time on administrative work and trying to figure out what each other was doing that we weren't actually getting to the meat of what we needed to be working on. So when we started talking about it, we were like, we want one place where we can see a prospect all the way through to a gift, and through participation. We want a shared understanding of what success looks like. So when we're running campaigns, I'm not taking all of it and putting it into a spreadsheet and then having to share it out and having a lag. Honestly, just less time chasing information and more time focused on the impact of what we are supposed to be doing. And so by bringing everybody together and allowing us to work in one place, we have created that system.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I was hoping for some, big event, but I'm
Very
just
anti-climatic. I mean,
Yeah.
I do remember the day our CEO, she was the vice president of development at the time, she was like, I cannot password reset one more system. I have to log into 8 different platforms to get one answer. And so really that was like the day. I remember that very clearly. I mean, we had so many places that we were logging in between volunteers and emails, our email marketing, our website, our QuickBooks. Then we were pulling spreadsheets, and it was just, you couldn't remember all your logins, let alone get the data that you needed. And it wasn't in real time because by the time I pulled the report and did anything with it, the data had changed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for those. That's actually, it sounds like a moment, again, we can all relate because
Yeah.
I make passwords in my life. Certainly.
Yeah.
So obviously you mentioned 2020, the team, you and the team everyone took some times and you decided to do things differently and move to a shared source of truth, right? Like one platform that will streamline everything. So now can you walk us through maybe specific campaign or event where having everyone in the same system change how the team worked all together? Kind of like in comparison to a previous situation.
Yeah, the one thing that sticks out to me, it's something that we do every year. It's our end of the year giving campaign. And so, because it includes fundraising, marketing, finance, and it's very concentrated fundraising in a short amount of time and high amount of fundraising, that the goal is to maximize our end of the year giving. So we're looking at re-engaging donors, bringing in new donors, upgrading donors. So there's a lot of analytics that we're constantly wanting in real time, to know where we are. And you're running against the end of the year, right? Like everybody wants to get their check-in and accounted for that tax season. So you want to make sure your outreach is hitting right. Before it was pretty fragmented. Again, different spreadsheets. The checks were coming in, but they were not being accounted for. It was just slow. And so now when they come in, they're being processed. So I'll take you how it is now. We're in one system. So we can see analytics, our emails go out. We can see all the analytics, like who is clicking, who's opening, what segment they were part of. Are they on a lapsed donor? Are they a upgraded donor? Are they new? So we know what communication they're getting. And like, oh, that story hit really well. That story didn't hit really well. We can see when they're giving. Is there a certain time? We can see if they're volunteering. Maybe they're going to be out on our construction site, and that's a great time to connect with them. Or if we're going to call them, don't call them while they're volunteering with us. They're not going to answer. So we can see those things. We have a development data coordinator that as soon as the checks are in, she's processing them in Giveffect. They sync directly with QuickBooks. And so all of that's done. So it's cutting down on the administrative work for Joe's team as well, because then it's synced. And it's allowing us to get to stewardship a lot quicker. So now we know the checks are in. We can see on this, we can see in our reports who's given, who hasn't. We can make sure we're calling the ones who have, calling the ones who haven't. So it's a lot quicker and we're all working together. I mean, at the end of the year, everybody wants to take some time off and enjoy it with their families. So we try to be as in sync as possible so we can get the work done and we're not spending a lot of time on the back and forth, just to the meat and potatoes of what we need to get done.
Absolutely. For those examples. Joe, I'm curious on your end, like using kind of with, and Melissa touched on some of the finance side as well, but what changed for finance once your team had visibility into the other system?
Yeah, so the biggest thing there is just allowing that first line of, data entry to be with the development team, right? So that allows when we get a lot of paper checks. And so, especially at that end of the year program time, we've got that giving campaign going. And like Melissa said, people want to get it in by the tax deadline. That was one of the things that to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, this many people are actually still sending, physical checks. We get a ton. And so just the lift of having that integration where someone on the development team can first be entering that data against whichever donor they prefer directly into the system first, and then syncing over the numbers, because on the finance side, I don't care who the money came from. I'm just excited that we have money. So it's kind of like it allows us to segment the work, but still allow us to get the data quickly and keep the process moving. And so that was kind of like, I think for me, one of the biggest things is like allowing the stewards of the donor to be the first line of recording the information and then handing it off to finance so that we can disseminate the numbers.
Yeah. You mentioned something that really stuck out to me because you mentioned how, the development side will enter the check and then you use the sync button to sync it to QuickBooks and so on. And why I found it interesting because sometimes I hear organizations talking how they don't trust their data, or sometimes they don't even kind of like I'm gonna call it trust within the organization, but they don't trust like somebody else in putting a check, and they will not have a full ownership, over entering the check and counting the check and everything like that. So it sounds like really within the organization there is this common trust to enter the data, sync the data, to for you then to check the data. So can you share a little bit more?
Yeah, it's really a wonderful circle of trust, I would say, right? Because it's a trust but verify, right? So I'm starting with the data coordinator who is on the development team, is familiar with the donors by name and the different funds and things like that. So they're that first person that when something comes in, they're putting that first line of defense, shall we say, into the system. Then it's syncing, but I still on my team, I'm verifying that data against what's coming into our actual bank accounts and making sure that we tie out. And so it is a trust and it is a little different, especially from finance people. It is a little bit different than what you're used to, allowing someone else to be the first entry point. But we have found that errors have been almost eliminated because again, I'm not guessing, is this a restricted donation? Is this really a company donation that came from another person? They just happen to, so all of that I'm not privy to and really I don't want to say isn't my business, but really isn't my business. When I talk about handling the accounting piece, that makes it so much easier. And so we do have that circle of trust, but we also have the verifications and the separation of duties that keeps everything compliant as well. So it's kind of almost a perfect solution for accuracy.
Yeah.
No.
I think that's one thing that really sticks out, like how this change has helped is that I feel like JoEllen and I work in partnership now. And in the past, other organizations I've worked for, finance has been very separate from development. Not really knowing what we're doing, or when you need numbers or want to talk about numbers, it's like, oh, well, like later. But now it's a lot of times we're working on things together. I need numbers for grants, or she needs document, like right now we're in the middle of an audit. Well, we put a lot of our documentation in Giveffect, and she has access to Giveffect. So instead of having to come and say, like, I need all of this documentation, she can type in the donor and see all of the information in Giveffect. And so it really has created more of a partnership between our two departments instead of keeping us completely siloed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's more times than not what we're doing is verifying with each other
Yeah.
that we're in agreement, and so it's instead of, oh, I put this down. Oh, it's like, no, we've got this all in one place and we're looking at the same data. And then we can, if we have a discussion about making a change to something, we know that we're all looking at the same source data. Because that sometimes is the other tricky point is, you know, no, everyone doesn't have full access to the financial system. We wouldn't want that. And so if my data in the financial system is something completely different than the data on the development side, then when we want to have a discussion, we're not even starting from the same point. And so that's where one of those other things that's been really great is like, okay, we're both looking at the same thing. And then if we want to talk about making some adjustments, it's easy to do that.
Yeah. Thank you for those. And definitely, I want to highlight that because I don't think I know there are organizations who probably operate similarly, but I also know that a lot of them are not. There was and Joe, what you mentioned, the separation of, separation of development and finance. And I've heard the situation where finance side wouldn't have access. They don't have a login. They never log in into CRM and they just like waiting for reports, for syncing, you name it, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone uses books. So I think it's such a great way to like work, remove those silos between teams and like collaborate more effectively.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you can create
Um,
logins. The great piece there is that the login is customized, right? So I need a more of a view only. I don't need to make changes and update people's address. That's not my piece in that. And so that's really great about it, and that there are so many different types of access. And so people get what they need, and it can be limited or not limited based on their role. So that helps as well.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. So like she has access to Giveffect, but then I have view only access to reporting in QuickBooks. So I can see my reports for development, my development team on my revenue and expenses on the QuickBooks side. And so I think that that is really helpful that it gives us, a lot of times I'm like, something's missing. And it's just because it was put in restricted or something, like it's not a big deal, but we can see it. So then we're on top of it and we're not waiting until the month end to go through. I mean, literally before we did this, we were spending hours on hours of reconciling. We would have our initial reconciling and then we'd be like, these are all the changes that need to be made. And then we would have a follow-up meeting to that. And so it was just so much time that we were spending on reconciling. And now it's like, hey, here's the reports. Taylor, our data coordinator, goes through them. Maybe sometimes there's like a couple changes, and most of the time that's because they came in ACH. And then we're on to the next thing.
Absolutely. And I think just going to how it affects day to day. I think I previously asked you, you said that maybe like at least 20 hours get saved, right? On that like reconciling piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. I wanted to bring on another piece because Melissa, I know you work closely with both fundraising and volunteer engagement as well. So,
Mhm.
and again, it's not the case in every organization, but a lot of times I know that volunteer engagement often treated separately from fundraising, even though it's like such a powerful relationship pathways. So can you share an example of how volunteer activity now connect more clearly to fundraising strategy? Engagement, like donor insights, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So here at Habitat, volunteer engagement is really one of the strongest pathways to long-term giving. A lot of our big donors are because they have been volunteering with us for a really long time, on the individual side. And then on the corporate side, I would say 99% of our corporate giving is tied to employee engagement. And they want their, like, yes, we're going to give, but we also want you to engage your employees. And so, we are, as you said, set up a little bit differently, that the team that I oversee includes volunteer services, fundraising, and marketing. So we're all one team that works together. Um, Before we were separate teams and separate systems. And so the one thing that as soon as I started here, our individual giving was kind of what I was focusing on when I started here 8 years ago. And I, wanted to see what volunteers were also giving. And that was literally impossible because they were in completely separate systems. And so unless you downloaded Excel and overlaid it, and then the data still was not good, you couldn't really tell who was giving. And so we were missing out on opportunities, and we weren't identifying volunteers who also had potential to become donors because our fundraising team didn't know the volunteers. And so now all of that has changed since we're in one team and one system. And it's how we approach relationships. And so our regulars who come out every week with us, they serve as crew leads on our construction sites as well. That pot of volunteers, they were barely giving to us, even though they were deeply committed to our mission. And now that's completely changed. We have donors that are giving over $100,000 each year to us in that pool. And so it's been a huge transformational change because we're also cultivating them, and we know that. And so we can meet with them and talk to them. Our corporate partners as well. The one thing, like being the beginning of the year, one thing I doing a lot of renewals right now. Our corporate partners want to know, how many volunteers did you engage last year? And so being able to pull a list of them and saying, like, these are the houses they worked on, this is how many, is really powerful and allows them to see how many people at their organization are involved, which then most of the time leads to more money. And so it's been really successful to have it all in one system. And like I mentioned earlier, most of our team building sponsorships are tied to volunteer days. And so making sure we're also doing what sponsorship benefits we told the donor that we would be doing.
Thank you, and congratulations to your team as well. It sounds like you're really, bridge the gap between that fundraising side and volunteer engagement side. So this is fantastic. I see
Absolutely.
so many questions, by the way, in the chat and Q&A as well. So we might start a little bit earlier, but I do have like a couple more questions before we wrap up. I think the big question, we talked a little bit about it throughout our conversation here, but if you are to, pick up a couple of things, since making the shift from siloed to one system, what would you say improved the most if you have to choose, right? Was it decision speed, reporting, confidence, fewer handoff, team accountability? Joe, Melissa, I think for both of your respective side, I'm curious if you can choose like a couple of things. What would it be?
Yeah, I think for me, so when we started, like I said, when I started here 8 years ago, before we were on Giveffect, our fundraising was very low. We were bringing in less than $100,000 in individual giving. And so this system now will hit close to $1 million in individual giving, and that's just individuals. And so it's allowed us to continue to grow in a really good way. There's less and better reporting. So as we grow, we're now really focused on major giving. And so being able to pull reports, I can see how much, we have a whole dashboard that's built of how much money is in the pipeline so that we know how many asks are out, how much is committed. We can see it's broken down by each fundraiser on my team. What is our percentage on major gifts? Are we increasing major gifts year over year? And so that type of reporting, we like to make data-driven decisions around here. It also helps as we're going into budgeting to say, like, look at the outcomes we're having, and now we need to bring another person on, instead of just trying to throw people at a problem that with no data.
Yeah. I think for me, obviously accuracy is up there. Any minutes, hours that I can save or people on my team can save, not going back and forth trying to get the numbers to tie out and to balance is something we can be, time we can use on something else. So with this sync, we really don't have much inaccuracy. Like the margin for error is very low. So that's a big win on the finance side. The other piece is just having a single source of where the data is. Melissa mentioned we have a pretty extensive audit every year. And so being able to just go into the system and pull down, okay, here's the grant agreement. Here's here's the payment schedule of this grant, because those are the type of things that auditors want to know. And I can't be involved in every piece of money that comes in the door and to know exactly where it came from and who got you. So just having that data at my fingertips, though, is so helpful in that I don't have to go to a third party to say, okay, can you pull the grant that you guys applied for? And we run on a fiscal year. Sometimes we applied for that at the end of 22, we might not get the money. So it's just not having to continually be asking people for different things when I need that data. It's really, really a time saver. And it seems simple, it seems really simple, like, oh, why don't you just keep it? But I mean, you'd be surprised. We had a lot of stuff that was just in the filing cabinet. You know how much time it takes and how much time you waste when you're going through an audit and you have to go through the actual physical paper files to pull something. And so for me, it's just time savings and accuracy.
Yeah. I think the other thing that we like our volunteer programming has just really evolved over the years as well. And so we are constantly our corporate partners, and I don't say this to just brag on ourselves, but Giveffect has made it so turnkey with us. We use the reservation system in Giveffect. It's a live form. They can see who signed up, who has filled out their waiver. They get automated reminders, so a 5-day, 3-day, a day of reminder where to go. And so it takes so much work off of our partners that they don't have to do anything to get their employees out to our construction site. Plus, then we can provide a really clean report back to them and say, like, hey, here's your team that came, here's when they checked in, here's when they checked out, here's how many hours you have for the day, for the year, whatever it is. That turnkey experience that we've been able to create with volunteer programming. I mean, last year we were over 4,000 volunteers. And so I think that our corporate partners, our community partners really recognize that because most of the people who are leading corporate responsibility, this is just like a side hustle for them, if you will. Like that's not their main responsibility to coordinate volunteers. And so now they're like, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to herd cats. I'm like, nope, you don't have to do anything. And they're like, great, sign us up for that year after year. And so it's been really phenomenal to see the feedback we get from partners as well on our volunteer programming.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those examples. And it seems like, for this past several years, really, we're glad to be part of the story, but it really, your team did such a fantastic job and seems like you've been through such a growth period kind of across multiple departments. So congratulations to your team and really looking forward to what's next for your team. But let's change the gears a little bit. And again, there's a number of the questions here, so I want to make sure that we cover as much as possible. So we're gonna change things up a little bit. And a reminder for everyone who is live on the call, please feel free to still use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen to add any additional questions there. But we'll start first thing first. Let's see what we have here. Yeah, so you kind of answered, Melissa, this question, but if you have any additional And anything else to add? But we have a question from Sue who asked, what is your budget at Habitat for Humanity of Kansas City? Have you grown since you started the system, and how has it grown with you? So anything else you would add on top of what you've shared?
Yeah, I mean, when I'll kind of give you team size too. So when I started 8 years ago, it was our VP of development and myself. We didn't have anybody in marketing. We had a director of volunteer services that was on a different team, so not working with us. And so it was a very bare bones system. We were using lots of different platforms. I can't even tell you what our volunteer number was then because it wasn't accurate. But it was not very much, I will tell you that. And so, like I said, last year was over 4,000 volunteers. That's between construction sites and in our 4 restores. And then our fundraising revenue, Joe, over 4 million last year in just fundraising, and that does not include government funding. I do see a message in grants. I see a message in the chat as well about grants. We do track grants through Giveffect as well. So our grants, we define grants at Habitat KC as government grants, and so those are all tracked through the grant module. All of your foundation or other grants per se that would be from individuals are tracked through the major gift tab in Giveffect.
Thank you so much for answering that. Wonderful. Next question is from Habitat Rockford, a little bit specific to Habitat. So, do your homeowner buyer contracts lives in the system as well?
Yes, they do live in the system. We use that for communication. So we have different newsletters that go out to them. We also track all of their partner hours, or you might call it sweat equity hours, in the system as well. And then we use like RSVP campaigns and fundraising campaigns for our financial education classes that we do as well. And so that's how we get people to sign up and track attendance.
We collect fees now there too. So that's been helpful in that when we have, say, a first-time homebuyers class, there is a fee associated. Before, those were all coming in via money order. So that's more that's more work for both of our teams, right? Someone's got to enter it, and then someone's got to take those money orders or scan them, or however you deposit physical things. So having that feature available for those classes and allowing people to pay online, that has been exponentially, great. Just to be able to pull that report and to see the registrations and the payment be completed online is great.
Services team then puts like demographics and different information we need about the homeowners that could be visible to other people in Giveffect, because a lot of reporting that we have to do, they want to know demographics or their AMI, how many children they have, is there anybody that's a veteran, those types of things that we need constantly in Giveffect. So then when I'm doing my reporting or proposals, I can go quickly in and pull that information without having to ask the homeownership team to give me that information.
Go back to that visibility also of the information and everything in one place where different members of different team can access information when they need it without a meeting or 5 meetings or email.
Yes.
Wonderful. So next question is from Kari, and the question is, do you have an outsourced direct mail marketing company that you use, or is all of your donor communication through in-house campaign employees? If you utilize an outsourced direct company, how easy did Giveffect integrate with that?
So we use a print house and a mail house, so for our direct mail. So kind of a hybrid. Yes, they do all of that for us, but we pull down like the mail list that we want to mail to and send it to them. The great thing about Giveffect is also that it has the NCOA check built into it. So you're getting that, I don't know how many times a year it runs, but your addresses are constantly updated. Prior to that being a feature of Giveffect, we had to download the list and send it to the mail house, who would then run it through NCOA to see if there was any address changes. Then we would have to import that back into Giveffect. which it worked, but now it's super nice that it's just built in and integrated into the system. Um, the working with the mail houses, the reports in Giveffect make it very easy in the tags to pull segmented list. And so that's not a problem at all. As long as you keep your data up to date, you shouldn't have any issues pulling reports to send to your mail house.
Thank you, Melissa. All
Mhm.
right. One more question here from Tony. Which of the Give Effect reports have you found most insightful for finding major donors? We are looking to have a more refined process for prospects.
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure that I have a specific one for prospecting. I mean, we do look, there's different wealth screens that can integrate with your subscription to Giveffect that you can use. Still, I would say we do a lot of prospecting on our own. We have found that not all wealth screens are 100% accurate. So I think we have a different template that we use that we do prospecting that then is uploaded to profiles. I think there's different reports to look at. Like I said, volunteers are such, for us, is the honeypot of money to figure out how they're spending their time. That's been a really good one. One we use a lot is a major gift one too, to look at upgrades. The lapsed donor one, we're constantly looking at to make sure that we can keep that at a very low minimum.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, that was a great question, interesting question. I'll see if all the team has any suggestions and we'll send it your way, Tony. The next question is Joe for you from Francesca. Is there an SOP you developed for integrating your finance department use of QuickBooks and entering data in Giveffect? Is the VP of Finance accessing Giveffect and running reports after data is entered? So I guess for both of you, perhaps the question is.
Yeah. So we do have some SOPs set up and very detailed of, this is the step-by-step process and gives who's responsible for what. And so that'll be different across organizations depending on how many employees you have and what roles you have and those type of things. Those will be unique to your organization. And so that's part of the reason why we didn't go too deep into it. I know I saw some things in the chat, like how do you integrate? What do you do? So just to kind of get those questions too, is that is going to be real specific to how you want your organization to run and your chart of accounts and how they will work. But the first thing you've got to do is you've got to sit down as people on the two teams and you've got to talk about it. How do we want this data to come over? Do we want it to come over based on the different, what are the chart of accounts that we want to use? So there is that initial meeting of meeting of the minds. We have to actually sit down and talk about what does this look like for our organization. And then once you've done that, then you can talk about, okay, so we're going to use this, this is how we're going to map the data from one place to another. For us, we have, about 5 different GL accounts that we use to sync the data. And then we use restricted or not restricted. Some people may not need that, so it's just that piece of talking through that piece at first. And then you can establish, okay, now we're all on the same page of how the data should be entered and disseminated, who's going to do what, and who's going to be the person responsible for making sure it's accurate. So to the second part of that question is, does the finance VP look at the information? Yes. So we're pretty busy around here. And so what we do on our team is we actually reconcile our 2 main accounts weekly. So we're looking at the accuracy of the data coming over on a weekly basis so that we don't get caught at the end of the month. And yes, it is ultimately when I have team members that are, working with the development team. Ultimately, though, it still comes to me for a final review. So they'll reconcile and everything looks good. And then I'm still the final person that takes a peek and says, okay, yes, I agree with this. Because you do have to have, that oversight. But so far, so good. It's worked. We've got these very detailed step one, do this, step two, go here, and it's worked. And we've had some rotation in both of our teams on the roles and who does those tasks. And we really haven't missed a beat. I mean, there's a little bit of a learning curve, of course, with anything, but for the most part, we've been able to just continue business as usual.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Joe. There was a quick question in the chat. I don't know if you can address. Did you create jail codes for restricted and non-restricted?
So, with us using QuickBooks, the way that we tackle restricted and non-restricted, we use the divisions. And so, in the past, yes, there was actually a separate GL code. It was restricted. And so we've moved over to using the divisions or locations in QuickBooks. So that's why I said this is very unique and as how you set your accounting system up. So no, we don't have separate GL codes, but that is one option is that you can have, individual giving non-restricted, individual giving restricted. You can set it up that way. For us, we're using the location feature within QuickBooks Online to separate them.
Yeah. Couple other very quick questions here. So, Melissa Markey asking is if you will be willing to share a print vendor or various print vendors you've used, if that's something.
The name of our print vendor, which they are very large and they don't just serve here. They are based here in Kansas City, but they don't just serve here in Kansas City. It's called NextPage. If you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to give you a contact person there.
Perfect. And I believe Nicole already put your contact information in the chat. So if anyone had, this question or another question, please feel free to connect. And one quick question from also, I think it's connected from Kate. How does the mail scrub work with pending duplicates? I don't know if you have
they
any
have
advice.
a great duplicate feature that pulls different names and addresses. I don't know, you can speak better to the technology behind all of it, but it gives you a duplicate list. And I would say that your NextPage, they still run it through a duplicate scrub to make sure that you don't have anything. They're still going to run it with NextPage, it's just baked into the cost for the NCOA. So if there is something in the in-between, they're going to catch it. But our lists are very, very small now, where they were thousands of people before.
Wonderful. And very last question, but I think this question is so important. How would you address integrating all necessary staff members into Giveffect when others do not want to learn or get embedded into the system? Or how would you suggest addressing staff members working in the system without any training?
That's a great question. I will be very honest. We did this in a very cadenced way. We didn't just jump all in at one time. We launched different parts of it as we integrated Giveffect, and we got really good at that part before we went to the next. We did tons of training, and we still do. And so as our data coordinator joined our team about 4 months ago. And so we sit down and we do lots of hands-on training. Also, there's tons, I have a whole list of the videos on Giveffect that I want my new hires to watch. Plus, we have documented all of our processes, as JoEllen talked about. And so we do have every process that is documented. How to enter a donation. What does this mean? How to pull numbers for major gift. How to pull reports, how grants are entered, and what the different things mean. And so that takes a lot of time. So it is a lot of time up front, but then after you get going, it's a huge time saver.
Yeah. I think I touched on that a little bit, is that you've got to have buy-in, right? You've got to have buy-in from the departments of, here is the benefit of us moving over to a different way of doing things. When we talk about training, Giveffect is pretty point and click, to be honest. You know what I mean? And so if you have team members that are working in your organization, you know, 90% of the time, they're pretty familiar with using a computer, right? They know, you know, if something's underlined, that's a hyperlink. I can click it. You know, I mean, it's very user friendly in that way. And so, yes, of course, you know, you want to make sure people are trained in following, you know, your SOP. But as far as, you know, someone who is maybe not, you know, who is hesitant, I think the thing to share is that this is a very user-friendly system. And then you've got your
So
top,
true.
you know, system administrators that are going to be your experts, and they can customize the role as well. So again, for me, I don't there's I need to know the financial things. I don't need to know, so I'm segmenting from those things because I don't need them. And so that's the other piece of telling people, hey, there's really not much you could mess up. If we've got you set up properly, you're only going to have access to what you need. So that can kind of help people with their trepidation of like, oh, I don't know, you know, I don't want to mess it up. Well, we're not going to let you mess it up. The system is set up in such a way that there are controls.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is just it is so user friendly. I mean, you can, I mean, there's a little tab says grants, you know, it's just one of those things where if you can use a computer and you can get on, you know, the different apps and social medias, you can use this too, and you can learn to be good at it.
I think that also with the buy-in, you know, you're always going to have some people that are like hesitant about it, but ultimately you have to make a decision. And for us, like the decision was made and we were moving to it. And so you have to get on board. We're going to give you all the tools to be successful. But at the end of the day, this is the system that we're going to use. I will say, like, when we moved to Giveffect, previously, we were doing paper volunteer waivers. So our volunteers were coming to the construction site and filling out a piece of paper. Now we don't have one piece of paper. If you're not, don't fill out your waiver online 2 weeks prior to your volunteer date, you cannot come to our job sites. And we are very strict on that because of safety. We will ask people to go home. And I know that some people are like, oh, no, 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 they're a volunteer. Well, we have to protect habitat and the safety of our volunteers. And so were there a few volunteers at the beginning that were like, that's kind of crazy and not on board? Sure. Now they love it because they have all the communication. They're not going to the wrong job sites. They're not getting misinformation. They know where to go and what to do all of the time. And we don't get any pushback on it now.
Melissa, Joe, thank you so much both for your time answering all the questions and for sharing your experience today. Your story shows really how strong collaboration across teams can simplify operation, bring more revenue, and ultimately help organization to move the mission forward. And I also want to thank everyone who stayed a little bit over time and joined us here live today, and for all of your engagement and all the questions that you've shared. Um, Again, please feel free to connect with our wonderful speakers online. And just a couple of things I wanted to quickly share before we hop off today. We have a wonderful offer, exclusive offer available right now for those who are joining live. All the details are on the screen, so please feel free to scan the QR code and connect with our team. We would absolutely love it. And we're also doing something fun throughout the next, right? Whether you're a client or not, we have a coffee on us. We have 10 winners every day. To enter, you follow us, Giveffect on LinkedIn, find the next related summit related topic. Don't forget the hashtag next 2026, and the winners will be announced every day at the very last session. So please stay tuned for it today as well. But that's pretty much conclude our session today. Again, thank you so much, everyone. There is a quick survey at the end. And next up, we have a short break followed by our next session, Diversified and Predictable Fundraising, Building a Revenue Model for Sustainable Growth. And it starts in just 3 minutes at 2 p.m. To navigate to that session, please go back to the schedule. There is going to be a purple button saying join, and we hope that you join our other 2 sessions that we have live today. But again, thank you so much, Melissa, JoEllen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll hope to see you live on other sessions.